Destroy the child. Corrupt them all.
The whole Iran-Contra affair. So they wanted Epstein to get into the arms smuggling race, give him a little side money, simple projects, but he proved too incompetent. So he wasn't to do that. But Doug Leese introduced him to Stephen Hoffenberg, who was running a Ponzi scheme for insurance companies, and he was taking everybody's investments, and he was trying to buy out some airliners. Pan Am was one of them, but because of the Lockerbie scandal, that completely fell apart, and he lost his investments, and the Ponzi scheme all fell apart. But Epstein walked away clear, and Hoffenberger went to prison for a decade for it. But nothing happened to Jeffrey Epstein. He was protected because he's in with Maxwell and in with the Israeli Mossad. And they made sure, even though the Ponzi scheme was his creation, his orders, Stephen takes the fall. Epstein gets nothing. And then he worked on, and that deal went through John Lehman, by the way, who is he was the Secretary of the Navy for a little while, which is where Pollard was spying on us, by the way, and the Naval Intelligence. And he would end up becoming a commissioner for the 9/11 Commission.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, then he goes to Bear Stearns, and again, another Ponzi scheme. He set up this thing. It's on the bottom of my map here with Liquid Funding Ltd. He put up 40% of the capital for this this SIV. Is called a Structured Investment Vehicle in Bermuda, after Bear Stearns set up Bear Stearns Dublin to get around American regulations. And then that set up this liquid funding in Bermuda, which was being used to offload toxic assets from the mortgage-backed security crisis scandal. So what they'll do in plain English is, on their books, you'll have debt obligations that put you in debt, and then you have whatever, the opposite, which you're going to go into the black or into the red. And what they did is they have all these toxic assets that they couldn't liquidate because they were part of the subprime lending scandal, which were packaged in CDOs, nothing you have to know, but it was like packaging a bunch of bad mortgages together and selling that as one clump security with a good face. It's kind of like having a roll of $1 bills with a 20 on top. Looks like a roll of 20s, but underneath it's all garbage. And a lot of these people were not able to pay for their mortgages. So yeah, eventually you're going to get to seize their assets. Then you got to sell those, and you can't liquidate quickly, and da da da. So in order to keep borrowing and being able to lend more and more to expand this bubble, which there's moral hazard for, because they didn't care whether the lenders paid back or not, because they sold those securities to third parties. So if that person doesn't pay back, Party C is now screwed. Party B is fine, because all they did is made the loans, collected all these IOUs, sold those IOUs to someone else. So then when this person doesn't pay the IOU, this one's left with their dick in the wind. The person that sold the security already made their money, and they wanted to continue to do that. And to do that, they had to have good ratings and a top tier. And the way they did that was through structured investment vehicles, which Epstein created with Leslie Wexner's money. So all they would do is they would sell their bad and toxic assets to liquid funding, so their book looks clean. They don't have any debts, but liquid funding's super in the hole, right? And then they would get the rating agency to come inspect their books and give them a high rating, and then on the first of the month they would buy the assets back again and rinse and repeat, right? They would just pawn them off and buy them back again. And in some of them, too, to make matters worse, they were making commercial paper based on these toxic assets, which is totally illegal, because you're supposed to have absolute top tier prime ratings to make commercial paper, which is just basically like a high interest loan that has to be paid back quickly. And that ended up in money markets. It ended up in Dreyfus Russell Investment, Frank Russell, excuse me, Dreyfus Money Market, and J.P. Morgan. And J.P. Morgan would come along and buy out Bear Stearns with the senior loan created by this Maiden Lane company, which was the New York Federal Reserve created. And then Maiden Lane pumped out $28 billion to J.P. Morgan's $1.2 billion. So 28 to 1, basically, to buy out all the toxic assets from Bear Stearns. And Epstein, nothing happens to him again. And he's just using other people's money. He was sponsored by the Mega Group, which is the Bronfmans and Wexner and all these prominent Zionists who made their fortunes selling illegal liquor, doing prohibition, and all these other illegal means. They created this group, a pro-Zionist think tank made up of Jewish billionaires. And more people have been added to this group over time. You've got Spielberg in there. You've got Michael Steinhardt, who's also been accused of harassing women, by the way. Spielberg and Hollywood have also been accused of man-boy loving and so on. But the founders, though, are the Bronfmans, who are the head of the World Zionist Congress and United Israel Appeal and all these pro-Zionist groups, and Les Wexner. And Les Wexner, who owns Victoria's Secret, which was being used as another modeling recruit for Epstein.
Right.
He's the real financial backbone for Epstein's shenanigans. I mean, he made him power of attorney. He gave him a $77 million house, like the biggest mansion in New York, went to Epstein from Les Wexner. And the Mega Group, they call themselves Mega because it's the nickname for the mega donors. Because despite what some people will say, there's no conspiracy of the Jews or something. It's not like, oh, all of these people are supporting Israel secretly all at once. And it's nothing like that. It's just a handful of very wealthy Zionist billionaires running the entire operation. And be damned what all the general Jewish population thinks, because they don't really matter. All that matters is if you get these billionaires using their philanthropies to launder money to get into AIPAC and Israeli pressure groups that are bribing Congress and pushing for positive media that we know help people who are obedient to Israel, then they win. But on top of that, they're using compromise tactics, and that's where you get the blackmail. Because you're talking about the richer someone is, the more and larger your bribe has to be to get them to move. Like if you're already a millionaire, a $30,000 bribe doesn't mean anything. It's just a huge risk and not a lot of money. Right. But blackmail, where you can lose everything, means a lot. On the opposite end is it's when someone's really poor, blackmail doesn't work. They'll just fight you or whatever. They have nothing to lose. But a bribe will go a long way. You wave 50 grand in front of someone's face that's practically homeless. They'll kill somebody. They'll do pretty much anything. Yeah. But with the rich, it's the opposite. You got to get blackmail. And what is the most effective form of blackmail? It's sexual blackmail. And what is the most effective form of sexual blackmail? It's pedophilia.
So what I'm taking from this is Epstein. He's been a con artist his whole life, like you said. He was basically an errand boy for Wexner for all these different things. Right. They said, okay, why don't you do this honeypot pedophile ring? The goal of this ring is to get politicians.
Well, no, they came up with that themselves. So Maxwell is the daughter is just as much of a pervert as Epstein, and so they weren't very good at the Ponzi scheme. They got caught. They weren't good at running arms. Other people got in trouble for that too. But they keep saving their golden boy because he's dating the daughter of a prominent Israeli spy.
And she loved him, right? She loved Jeffrey. Like, wasn't she in love?
She loved they don't love. They love the power they had over the people and stuff, because they're both raping kids together and sleeping with models and so on. So, according to the victim's testimony. And so that was where they found their niche. These little sexual perverts were good at that. So that became their thing. It's like, okay, they're really motivated into this. But the Israelis kind of kept them at arm's length because they saw how out of control it was. Mm-hmm. And so,
economy all you want. This is their plan, people. They're frickin' interdimensional invaders.